All right, let's pull back the curtain on the digital world. We're going to see how the software we use every single day is really built, how it goes from just a spark of an idea to that icon sitting right on your screen. You've probably thought about it, right? It can feel a little bit like magic, but the truth is, behind every single app icon is this massive, structured process. It's really less about magic and way more about architecture. And that's the big idea for today, software engineering. I want you to think of it exactly like building a house. You wouldn't just show up with a pile of wood and start hammering, would you? No way. You need a plan, a blueprint. And it's the same with software. This digital architect approach is what makes it professional. So just like any good construction project, we have to start with that blueprint. In the software world, this is called the requirement phase, and honestly, it is absolutely crucial. Now here's something that might actually surprise you. The first and maybe the most important step in building software involves zero coding, none. It's all about talking, listening, and understanding, figuring out precisely what problem we are trying to solve. And this is where that blueprint gets really detailed. It's basically broken into two main parts. First, you've got your functional requirements. This is what the house must do. It needs a front door, it needs windows. For software, that might be a user needs to be able to log in. But then you've got non-functional requirements. This is all about how well the house does its job. How strong is the foundation? How secure are the locks? For an app, that means things like speed, security, and reliability. You need both to build something that lasts. Okay, so the blueprint's done. Now it's time to decide how we're going to build this thing. For a long, long time, the standard way was a method called Waterfall. You can think of it as the traditional kind of assembly line way of building. The name really says it all, doesn't it? You start at the top, and each phase just flows straight down into the next one. You finish one step completely before you can even think about starting the next. You can really see it here. It's a one-way street. Once you finish the design phase and you move into building it, well, there's no going back to tweak the design. You have to keep moving forward, which, as you can probably guess, has some serious pros and some serious cons. So here's the deal with Waterfall. On the one hand, it's super simple, it's very structured, and you get great documentation out of it. But on the other, it is incredibly rigid. What happens if the client realizes halfway through the project, you know what, I wanted a balcony there, not a giant window? With Waterfall, that is a huge, huge problem. You don't get to see anything that works until the very end, and making changes then is it's a nightmare. That exact inflexibility, that problem of not being able to change your mind, led to a totally new way of thinking, a method that pretty much dominates the software world today: Agile. So instead of trying to build the entire house all at once, the Agile approach is to build it room by room. The work is done in these short little cycles, they're called sprints, and the goal of every single sprint is to build a small, working piece of the final product that the customer can actually see and touch and give feedback on. The difference between this and Waterfall is it's night and day. Instead of that one-way street, Agile is a repeating circle. You plan a small feature, you design it, build it, test it, and then this is the most important part, you review it with the customer. Then you take what they said and you start the next cycle. The entire process is built around adapting to change. The biggest win for Agile, for sure, is its flexibility. The customer is right there with you every step of the way, so you can easily adapt to new ideas. So what's the catch? Well, it can get a little chaotic. With less upfront planning, wires can get crossed, and without all that heavy documentation, maintaining the project years down the road can get tricky. All right, so it doesn't matter how you build it, Waterfall or Agile, every single house needs a thorough inspection to make sure it's safe and up to code. In software, we call this the testing phase. The goal here is pretty simple, right? Does this thing do what our blueprint said it was supposed to do? Is it reliable? Does it totally fall apart when you put it under a little pressure? Testing is all about finding the problems before the users do. I really love this analogy because it makes so much sense. There are two main ways testers look at software. You've got black box testing. That's like taking a car for a test drive. You don't know how the engine works. You just want to see if the car, goes and turns and stops. You're just testing if it works. Then there's white box testing. This is like popping the hood and looking right at the engine, the code itself, to check all the internal wiring and make sure it's all built correctly. And testing happens at different scales. You start small with unit testing. That's like checking every single brick to make sure it's solid.
Then you move up to integration testing, making sure all the bricks fit together to form a strong wall. And finally, you have system testing, where you check the entire house to make sure it works as one complete solid structure.
Okay, now here's where our house analogy, it kind of starts to break down a little bit. Because once a house is built, for the most part, it's done. But software is never ever finished. And that brings us to the final and by far the longest phase, evolution. The reality of the digital world is that software is a living thing. It has to constantly be updated to fix bugs, adapt to new phones and operating systems, and add the new features that people are asking for. The moment a company stops updating their app is the moment it starts to die.
And you'd probably think that most of this ongoing work is just fixing bugs, right? Well, take a look at this. That corrective maintenance, fixing bugs, is only about 20% of the work. Over half of all the effort goes into perfective maintenance. That's adding new features and making the app better. So it's really far more about renovation than it is about simple repair.
This quote just nails it. It perfectly captures the heart of modern software. It's not a one-time event. It's a continuous cycle of improvement, always trying to keep up with a changing world.
So that's the whole journey. We went from a simple idea to a detailed blueprint, we chose a way to build it, we inspected its quality, and then we committed to a lifetime of renovations. It is a complex, it's dynamic, but it is a fascinating engineering process.
So the next time you tap on an icon on your phone, just think for a second about that huge, ongoing process that's happening behind the scenes. What new rooms are being built right now? What kind of renovations are underway? And what invisible evolution will your favorite app undergo next?